Welcome back to the deep dive. So, if you're like most of us, you've probably been trained your whole life to believe that the faster you make a decision, well, the smarter you are.
Mm. Decisiveness is treated like a badge of honor.
Exactly. But today, we are going to flip that script completely.
I think we have to.
We've spent a lot of our previous deep dives talking about things like measuring risk, how to spot those irreversible decisions, and, how to take safe first steps.
Right.
But the mission today is a bit different. We want to cut through that constant, almost artificial pressure to just choose, commit, and move.
Always move forward.
Always. Instead, we're going to explore the profound wisdom that can be found in just waiting. We're going to try to isolate that critical distinction between avoiding a choice out of fear and actively discerning the right, safe moment to act.
And that societal pressure you mentioned, it is overwhelming. It's really the first obstacle we have to dismantle here.
It is.
We live in a culture that, it treats decisiveness as this core virtue of leadership, of competence. And if you don't instantly make up your mind, commit to a path and just move forward aggressively, the default assumption is that you're weak.
Or paralyzed, or you just don't care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It creates this really powerful but false narrative, and you start to internalize it, this idea that forward motion is the only real measure of success.
Yeah.
But what our source material today really insists on, and what we need to hold as our core principle, is that decisiveness on its own, it is absolutely not the same thing as wisdom.
Okay.
Wisdom involves timing.
That is the crucial reframe. So let's look at why not deciding attracts so much, negative labeling. When you choose to pause, you're almost immediately accused of procrastination.
Right, or avoidance.
Or just being paralyzed by fear. And what happens is that this external framing, it becomes internalized. And for you, the listener, it starts to manifest as this personal shame. You think, I should have figured this out by now.
I'm the only one stuck in this limbo.
What's wrong with me? It's a really damaging cycle.
It is. And the problem with that kind of knee-jerk framing, that any pause equals failure, is that it completely ignores the mechanism of judgment.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's a very blunt tool being applied to a very nuanced reality. It ignores the difference between avoiding a decision, because the complexity is just overwhelming.
Right.
And waiting until the necessary data and, the internal conditions all line up, which makes the decision genuinely safe and clear.
I see.
When people rush, they often mistake action for progress. They're just reacting to that internal pressure to do something. And in doing so, they fall victim to what psychologists call cognitive tunneling.
Cognitive tunneling. So that's like getting tunnel vision. Right.
Precisely. You restrict your mental vision to just the immediate problem and whatever the shortest path to a resolution is, and you miss all this crucial peripheral data that would have made the wait worthwhile.
Okay, so let's really unpack that central distinction then. Avoidance versus discernment. Because from the outside, they both just look like inaction.
They do.
But they feel radically different internally, which, according to the sources, is the only true way to tell them apart. So how can you tell if you're avoiding or if you're wisely waiting?
We really need to contrast the two states by looking at their internal texture, the emotional and the cognitive energy they produce.
Okay.
So, avoidance. It feels tense. You feel that knot in your stomach when you think about the choice. You're actively pushing the decision away because it feels overwhelmingly large or dangerous or just confusing.
Right.
Fundamentally, avoidance comes from a place of fear. Fear of making the wrong choice, or maybe fear of the effort that's required. You're running from it.
Oh, okay, that makes sense, running from it. So what about the positive side? What does discernment or wise waiting feel like?
Discernment feels calm.
Calm, a total opposite.
Totally. It doesn't push the decision away. Instead, you hold the decision gently in your mind, almost like a complex object. Just need to turn over a few more times.
I like that visual.
Yeah, and there's a recognition that more understanding is needed, but you haven't internalized that need for immediate action. This approach comes from a place of profound self-respect.
Self-respect.
Respect for your own clarity and your own need for safety. You're waiting for the right moment.
That is huge. Tense versus calm. Fear versus self-respect. But let's get practical. How do you shift from that fearful, tense state to the discerning, calm one? For a lot of people, if a big decision is looming, tension is the default setting.
It is. The shift happens when you change the mental task. So if you're tense, you're probably asking, how do I solve this right now? If
Mm.
you're discerning, you're asking a different question. You're asking, what condition is missing that makes this decision feel incomplete?
Nah.
And that tiny shift from resolution to observation, that's the gateway.
Let's apply that to a real-world scenario. Let's say you've got a major, irreversible career decision, a job offer maybe, with a 2-week deadline, and you feel really conflicted. Avoidance would mean you spend those 2 weeks just distracting yourself, right? Checking social media, ignoring the email until the very last day.
Exactly. And that whole avoidance state is driven by fear. Discernment in that very same 2 weeks looks totally different.
How so?
You use the deadline as a container, but for intense, calm, high-quality information gathering. You're respecting your future self by not committing a valuable resource, your career path to an unverified outcome.
So the external deadline doesn't get to dictate your internal processing speed.
That's it, perfectly put.
Okay, so let's identify the specific conditions where pausing is not just permissible, but is actually the highest act of judgment. We need some specific signals that tell us, okay, now is the time to wait.
We've actually isolated 5 key signals from the sources that indicate when the smart move is to pause.
Great.
The first one is when information is incomplete. Now, this sounds obvious,
And it does sound obvious.
but so many people mistake the volume of information for its completeness. If you only have surface-level facts, wait.
Okay, that's a good distinction. The second one, which this connects directly to that cognitive tunneling you mentioned, is when pressure is heavily present. But, wait a minute, isn't some pressure necessary to spur action?
It can be.
How do we distinguish the productive, mobilizing kind of pressure from the debilitating kind?
That's a great question. Productive pressure often aligns with short, reversible actions. Debilitating pressure, on the other hand, is usually tied to high-stakes, irreversible outcomes.
I see.
So if the pressure is making you seek the fastest, easiest exit, not the best solution, it's debilitating. Wisdom here means creating a guardrail for yourself. You decide, I will not make an irreversible move under an artificial deadline.
That's a really powerful internal boundary to set. Okay, the third condition is so important for high performers. When your personal energy is low, you've had a busy week, you're depleted, and now you have to sign a major contract. That just feels like a mistake waiting to happen.
And if you absolutely must act while you're depleted, the strategy has to change. You should only be acting on decisions that require a very low cognitive load.
Sure.
Or you rely entirely on preset external guardrails. You delegate the heavy cognitive lifting, or you punt. If you're running on empty, your capacity for nuance and risk assessment is at 0. Just wait.
Okay, makes sense. The fourth signal is when the consequences are hard to undo. In other words, the choice is highly irreversible.
The heavier the potential consequence, the longer the necessary pause. This is where patience really pays dividends.
And the final one.
And finally, there's the internal signal. When something just doesn't sit right yet, that internal hesitation, that little voice telling you to wait, that's not fear.
It's experience.
It's experienced discernment. It's your subconscious telling you that the pattern doesn't quite close yet. Waiting in these moments is self-respect in action.
So we've established that not deciding isn't just doing nothing. It's a high-level act of judgment. So what does this active waiting strategy actually look like on the ground? It's not sitting back and relaxing.
Not at all. It's a very specific, intentional set of behaviors.
Right.
It replaces the urgency of choosing with the intention of understanding.
Yeah.
And the concrete behaviors associated with active waiting are all focused on increasing clarity, not just accumulating more facts.
Okay, so what's the first one?
First, it looks like learning quietly. This isn't just, researching the product or the proposal. It's gathering metadata on outcomes.
Metadata.
You're looking for the subtle patterns in previous failures or successes related to this kind of situation, not just the surface-level details. And you're learning without broadcasting your hesitation to the world.
That subtle observation is so key. If you rush to announce your dilemma, you just get flooded with other people's opinions, which muddies your own clarity.
Exactly. Active waiting gives you the space to observe patterns without all that outside noise.
What else?
It also means asking better questions, not just trying to find the next answer. So instead of asking, should I sign this contract?
Yeah.
Ask, what condition must be met for me to feel fully confident signing this contract? The focus shifts from the pressure to the missing piece of the puzzle.
And the hardest behavioral shift, I think, for modern life is letting that urgency fade. We are just conditioned to instant responsiveness.
You have to. You have to deliberately separate the urgency of the clock from the readiness of the decision. You become an observer, a learner, who's just watching how the situation unfolds naturally. Rather than feeling like a pawn being rushed to meet someone else's artificial deadline, you have to realize that a deadline set by someone else for their convenience is not a biological imperative for your action.
That is a fantastic line. So what's the ultimate benefit of this strategic delay?
The profound benefit is twofold. First, it protects your clarity, preventing you from muddying the waters with a premature move. And second, and this is crucial, it preserves your confidence. So when you finally move, you move with conviction, because you waited for the conditions to be right, not because you were forced into it by exhaustion or by fear.
So let's widen the lens a bit. What's this whole approach of wise waiting and slowing down mean for the bigger picture? Our sources highlighted that this gains a kind of strategic importance later in life, specifically when we talk about people reaching, say, 55 or beyond.
Yeah, it's all about the strategic shifts from accumulation to stewardship.
Accumulation to stewardship.
In the earlier parts of your life, the dominant mode is often racing. You're racing to prove yourself, racing for a promotion, racing to acquire assets.
Right.
And in that environment, decisiveness is often rewarded because rapid acquisition is the goal.
Makes sense.
But as you age, that motivation, it changes. You're no longer racing anyone or proving your worth to the external world. The focus completely shifts to choosing how much of your most valuable, non-renewable assets.
Your time, your energy, your attention.
Exactly. How much you're willing to invest. Decisions stop being about getting ahead. They become about conserving and protecting your reserves.
That makes the decision to wait a profound strategic move then. It's not a stall. It's a conscious resource allocation decision. You're basically saying, I will not spend my limited attention budget on a task that is not yet ready for resolution.
Precisely. Waiting is not just a valid decision in this context, it is very often the best one. It's a form of environmental control. It prevents the unnecessary expenditure of energy on something that, frankly, doesn't deserve your attention until it achieves clarity. The goal shifts from maximal output to minimal regret.
This brings us to what I think is the ultimate takeaway, the reframe we really need you to carry forward from this. You do not owe the world a decision on its arbitrary timeline. The timeline is yours, and your life experience is the metric.
To really solidify that, let's look one more time at the 4 absolute key conditions under which you should move forward. Anything that doesn't meet these requirements can wait. And frankly, it should wait. You should only feel compelled to move when something is 1. Clear, 2. Understandable in all its mechanisms and potential failures, and 3. Reversible, or at least the irreversible cost has been fully acknowledged and accepted without any internal resistance.
And critically, 4. It has to be right for you. Let's elaborate on that final point, because right for you doesn't just mean comfortable or easy, does it?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It means aligned with your current values and your long-term goals. If a decision is technically sound, clear, understandable, reversible, but it's fundamentally misaligned with the direction you're trying to move in life, it's still the wrong decision.
Right.
This last condition forces you to connect a tactical choice to your strategic life map. If it feels right deep down, meaning it respects your energy and your values, then and only then do you move.
And if you are listening to this right now and you're feeling that anxiety that you're somehow lagging behind, or you're slow, or you're missing something that everyone else seems to grasp instantly, we want you to just release that thought.
Please do.
You are not behind. You are not slow. You are navigating a complex world using your hard-earned experience to inform your pace. And that level of discernment deserves, it demands, and it requires sufficient time. You have earned the right to wait.
So let's leave you with this provocative thought to explore on your own this week. If true wisdom is found in waiting for the optimal internal and external conditions, what crucial decision in your life right now are you mistakenly viewing as tense avoidance, instead of recognizing it as an act of self-respecting discernment? And perhaps more importantly, what is the next question you need to ask to unlock clarity, rather than the next step you're currently rushing yourself to take?